Hello everyone, and welcome to another jam-packed episode of Nintendo Everything Refresh, the weekly show where we walk you through everything new and exciting that's been going on in the world of Nintendo. And boy oh boy, is there a lot going on in the world of Nintendo right now. I'm your host Nick Serpa, joined today by the wonderful Luiz Estrella.
Hello everyone, always awesome to be back here again.
Yes, great to have you back, Luiz. And we've also got the spectacular Nicolas Shade joining us.
Hello! Very happy to be here this week.
Yes. We were talking before the show about some of the things we're excited about, and there's a lot to get into. So this week's episode is going to be a little bit different, obviously, as I'm sure all of you are most likely aware. We had a Nintendo Direct this past week, and it was a big one. So big that we will probably not be talking about very much else this week, just because there's so much to unpack and get excited for. There was some other news that happened this week, but like, come on, does anything else really even matter at this point? Let's be real. No, if there's really big stuff, we'll probably talk about it next week. But yeah, this Nintendo Direct, I think, it definitely had something for everyone. There were a lot of surprises. The first party stuff that they showed off, I think it was a lot of things that folks have been asking for a while, and so to finally see some of that come to fruition was very exciting. So we're going to start off just by talking about the first party announcements that we had in this Nintendo Direct. And in terms of brand new games, brand new Nintendo developed stuff that we've never seen before, there really wasn't much. Most of what we saw in this Direct was stuff that Nintendo has already talked about, at least in some capacity in the past. But the big new announcement, I think, is so exciting. It was Metroid Prime Remastered. The long-rumored, return to 3D Metroid that folks were wondering, is it going to be a remaster? Is it going to be the whole trilogy? Well, now we know it is just a remaster of the first game. But not only is it a freaking amazing remaster, if I may say so myself, they shadow dropped it. So you can just go buy it and play it right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's cathartic to finally see it come to fruition after it being rumored for so long.
Yeah.
We no longer have to wait. Although now I guess all the rumors are just going to shift to when are we getting Prime 2 and Prime 3. So.
Right. Well, yeah, it was always, one way or the other. It was either the rumor was we're going to get a remaster of the first game or we're getting the whole trilogy. And I think, I don't want to be like, I know we literally just got this game, so it feels weird to already be thinking about Metroid Prime 2 and 3, but I'm sure some people are, because this remaster, we'll talk more about it towards the end of the show, but it's really an impressive remaster. They've done quite a bit, I think more than folks were expecting. It's not just a simple up-res, making the game look sharper, although it certainly has that.
I think coming from Skyward Sword HD, I think a lot of people are impressed that this time they actually put a lot of effort in the graphics department. I think that's one of the reasons why people are so impressed.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways,
no
it's
kidding.
more a remake than a remaster. They overhaul the lighting engine, the texture work so much that it feels more like a remake.
I think it's pretty similar to what they did with the Xenoblade Definitive Edition, where they not only changed textures, but a lot of the assets were also changed.
Yeah, definitely.
And on top of that, they were very excited in the trailer to advertise that there are multiple new ways to, pick your favorite control scheme. So if you want, you can use something that kind of resembles the original GameCube controls. Or, the thing that I was initially excited about is they're bringing back the pointer controls from the Metroid Prime trilogy, which work pretty well in docked mode. The handheld mode, I think it's a little bit finicky, but they also have, for the first time ever, a traditional dual stick controller setup. So if you want to play it like, every other first-person shooter, you can do that now.
They also even have a colorblind option in the settings for their, I think it's for the visors and the enemies.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, which is super cool.
Yeah, they've definitely tried to add in features that have become more commonplace. I also saw something that here in North America, there were different versions of Metroid Prime over the years. And I guess in the European and Japanese versions, they added in narration to certain cutscenes. Like a very dramatic, I don't really know how to describe it. It's just a very dramatic like voiceover. It sounds like you're watching like a old sci-fi movie in a way. And and so now you can, if you want that on, you can do it regardless of where you're living in the world. So yeah, it really seems like they tried to think of everything. Yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing that's notable about this, not only is the fact that they just shadow dropped it, which Nintendo never does, but that it's a $40 game.
Yep.
Which is also something that Nintendo not usually does.
Not usually, yeah.
They'll sell Mario Strikers at 60, but Metroid Prime at 40, because that makes sense.
Right. I remember when they released the WarioWare for Switch, that was 50. So it does seem like they're experimenting a little bit more in recent years. But yeah, I think that, that brought this game into impulse buy territory.
Yeah, I like the experiments they've been doing with pricing structure, and we can talk more about that when we get to Tears of the Kingdom. But I like the idea of them starting to price games more individually, rather than giving everything just a flat 60.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, not that I don't think that like Metroid Prime Remastered could maybe be worth it. I mean, clearly there's a lot of money that was spent on making this game as good as it is, but yeah, I mean, the lower price tag combined with just releasing it the day of the Direct, I think those two things in combination are probably got a lot of people to pick it up who, for some folks this might be their first Metroid Prime game. And I think this was part of their strategy to kind of maybe bring in some new players.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, this shows that Nintendo usually, a lot of the time, I think we assume that those companies price their products by how much money they spent making the game, how much budget they spent. But I don't think Nintendo actually works like that. I think they just see how much value the franchise, the brand actually has. Like, for example, Zelda is definitely a premium product for Nintendo. Like Skyward Sword ATD was a very simple remaster, but it was priced at a full $6 price. And now we have Metroid Prime, which we know is a series that historically has not sold a lot and needs a more friendly price tag to reach better sales. So they have gone now with $40, which I think is great.
Yep.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to mention is regarding the development of the game, and I guess also this leads into what's going to happen with Prime 2 and Prime 3. Because as it happens, some of the rumors that came out about the game seem to be true because they all line up with what we've seen. Rumors from like October 2021. But basically, those same rumors mentioned that originally Retro was working on remastering all 3 of the Metroid Prime games. When Bandai Namco was starting to have issues with development, they put, I think it was Retro's programming team to basically help them while the art directing team kept working on Prime Remastered. Nintendo decided, you know what, they're doing such a good job with both of these projects separately, let's just put the entirety of Retro on Prime 4. So that's when development for Prime 4 restarted, and Prime 1 was left to be finished by other third-party studios, which I think we've seen pop up in the credits. I know Iron Galaxy was one of them.
Yeah, there's quite a few that were involved.
Yep, and the idea would be that Prime 2 and Prime 3 would be remastered using Prime 1 as a template by those other third-party porting studios.
Yeah, that's all interesting. I could see that happening. I mean, it does kind of make sense. I think a lot of folks were concerned when they saw over the past few years, Retro Studios was hiring for some very senior positions. And I think that had some folks worried, like, oh shoot, is Metroid Prime 4 still in such an early stage of development where they're still hiring all these key people? But yeah, now some folks are theorizing, okay, well, now that we know this exists and that Retro was involved, maybe they were moving some folks around to work on this game, and so they were bringing on some extra staff. So it still doesn't really give us like a firm indication of where exactly Prime 4 is in development, but the fact that they're putting out this game now kind of leads me to believe that this is going to be part of their overall ramp up to Prime 4, which gives me hope.
Yeah,
Just watch Prime 4 be the holiday release.
Could you imagine? I mean,
right. Oh my gosh.
Being honest with you guys, if Prime 4 comes out looking as good as this remaster, I'm perfectly fine. I think I didn't play the game yet, but just looking at gameplay, it just feels that one of the more beautiful Switch games, like those more realistic games, right? Because I was a little bit worried that Metroid Prime 4 is a little bit too realistic for the Switch, if it will be able to keep 60 FPS. But looking at how this remaster looks, I think that's the perfect base for a Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah,
visually
and Retro
speaking.
worked on this Prime Remastered, so there's no real reason not to think that they'll keep that consistency and have Prime 4 follow like a similar style.
Right. Yeah, and if this is, this is just a remaster and they're putting this much work into the textures and, like they've really upgraded all the models, the lighting, it really looks stunning, especially in handheld mode. Oh my gosh, like seeing a game that looks that like sharp and alive on such a small screen is incredible. But yeah, if they're just using this as like the bones for Metroid Prime 4, I think that game could be for something very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, as much as I could talk about this game, probably for an entire episode of the podcast, we're about like 3% of the way through the Direct, so we should probably move on to some other stuff. The other, I think, really big surprise that a lot of folks were hoping for, but not everyone really thought we would see, is that we finally got confirmation that Switch Online is getting Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games, the latter through the expansion pass. And it came out also the same day as the Direct. So, if you're a Switch Online member, you can now go and you can play Game Boy. There's some Game Boy Color games and also Game Boy Advance games. This is a great thing to see.
It's crazy that it's taking this long for us to start touching the heels of what the Virtual Console used to be.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, it's still, well, and, speaking of that, after the Direct, one of the things that Nintendo said was that they currently don't have a set schedule for when they are going to be releasing more Game Boy games. Like,
just
that
insane.
doesn't give me a lot of
whenever they feel
hope.
like they're going to release.
It's such an easy slam dunk of like, bam, every month here's like 2 or 3 Game Boy Advance games for the next year or so. Like, here's a guaranteed regular supply. It would be so easy for them to just say that, or at least give us a schedule to get people excited and interested. But, Nintendo's gonna Nintendo.
And
so.
there's I think the library for the GBA in particular is like gigantic. I think there's a lot of stuff that they can put here, but the stuff that they show that is already available and the stuff that they show that they are going to put in the future, I think it still feel like a very slim library. Of course, they're going to deliver more, but it just makes me feel like, when are we going to receive all those games? Like 2026, 2027, we are going to still be receiving GBA games. So that's a little worrying. But aside from that, I think that was probably my favorite announcement, because there's tons of GBA games that I never played, like Minish Cap, for example, that I'm super excited to play for the first time right now. So I was eagerly waiting to finally have GBA on the Switch to play a lot of these games.
Side note, can we talk about how odd it is that we have Super Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy, but not Super Mario Land, like the first one?
Yeah.
Such an odd decision.
They do that a couple times. Like, they're bringing over Wario Land 3, but then not the first two. Super Mario Advance 4.
Well,
I'm sure there's a reason for why they're doing it. I know they can't. I mean, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they can't bring over everything, but they kind of did in the past on the Wii U. So like they could. It's a weird starting point for sure.
Yeah.
But there are some good games in here.
This is still great, though.
There were some surprises. Yeah. Like I'm sure a lot of folks who are happy to see that for the Game Boy they'll be bringing Pokemon the card game.
Yes.
So
yes, it's so good.
I think that was one thing that a lot of folks were like, oh, when the 3DS dies, there's not really going to be a great way to play this game, and here you go. That's coming.
Nice.
Another, I think, out of left field one was Kuru Kuru Kururin, which is not a game I'm super familiar with, but I think it is a Nintendo. Is it a Nintendo IP? Do you guys know?
I've never heard about it.
Yeah, I saw that in
was.
the Direct, and I had no idea what it was.
Yeah, okay, so it's not a Nintendo developed game, but it is a Nintendo published game, and it's a puzzle video game. And I don't remember where I first heard of it, but I remember hearing it was very good, and so I was very surprised to see it as one of their games.
Nice, I'll probably give it a try.
Yeah. Honestly, this is probably what's going to get me to get the expansion pass. I'm really grateful that the Game Boy games are just part of the default membership. That makes sense, and I'm glad they didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't just push their luck trying to put that into the expansion pass.
I definitely see more value on the expansion pack right now.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, the GBA games, that's a huge thing. Like, N64 is nice and all, but I'm far more interested in the GBA library, personally.
Man, like, I mean, talking about the games, Golden Sun, I think will become in the future, which is another game that I really wanted to play. And we also had Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, which is another great big JRPG. And from what I heard,
Emblem?
Fire Emblem. But about Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, if I'm not mistaken, there was like an adapter for the GameCube where you could play this game with Rumble. And apparently the Nintendo Switch Online emulates that. So you can play the game with Rumble. That's just great emulation.
Really?
And I really like to see Nintendo putting the efforts in that department.
Yeah, plus we have stuff like
that's really cool.
all the multiplayer Game Boy Advance games, which, you know, back in the day would have been a pain to have hooked up. Now you can do stuff like Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, 4 people, like, no real issue. Which is not something that I think many people would have been able to experience.
True.
Yeah, I have a very vivid childhood memory of going over to my friend's house and hooking up our Game Boy Advances with a Game Boy Link cable so we could play Mario Kart Super Circuit together. And you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, just talking about. Whoa, there's just that. It's raining here, so just a big thunder. I don't know if you guys heard. But talking about the games,
it was for dramatic effect.
Yeah. Talking about the elephants in the room, do you guys think we are going to see Pokemon here?
I was talking about this with a friend, and I don't. Pokemon is so bizarre. They don't like porting their games over. The only time we've had the mainline games ported over were on the 3DS, and it was for a premium, where they cost more than the regular Game Boy games. So I don't know. I feel like if they did come over, it would be because Pokemon wanted to make more money, and so they would release them separately. Like what they did with Fire Emblem. Yeah.
Like a Pokemon Legacy collection or something like that.
No, they would sell all of them individually for like $6.
I mean, they would probably had to add the functionality to transfer the Pokemon from this game. So I think that some work would probably have to be done.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It would have to have extra development effort if they wanted to link to it, which they probably would. So I don't think they would just put that on the service. They would tie it to something else, and it would cost extra. It'd be like Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, I think it was, where there was extra translation work that went into it, and so they sold it separately rather than putting it just on the Switch Online.
I see.
The other question, which is something
I think they might just put them in the service eventually, because they put in. They announced the Pokemon Stadium games for N64, and those had a feature where you could transfer in Pokemon, but they just said it just didn't work. So I could see them putting them in.
I mean, they've always played faster and looser with the spin-offs, though. Like, the spin-offs, it doesn't seem like they've had any problems re-releasing. It's the mainline games that they've just held in, like, an iron grip.
Yeah. Well, they'd rather you go buy Scarlet and Violet, so.
Have we thought about the possibility of Mother 3?
Oh!
It's within the realm of possibility.
We're a step closer.
I wouldn't...
I mean, theoretically, I'd imagine at some point it's probably going to come to the Japanese part of the service, right? Mm-hmm. And so theoretically, if you really wanted to, you could probably play it that way, but you just won't have any English. So that still doesn't really make it accessible to a lot of folks. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Nintendo surprised a lot of folks when they released Earthbound Beginnings on the Wii U. So it's not impossible.
I mean, I
Which is
think
exciting.
Mother 3 is probably the one that would be sold separately because
Yes.
again they would have to translate everything, so they would do something really similar to what they did with Earthbound on the Wii U, where they announced like is this big new game.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, at least they have a working emulator for it now, because they can just probably repurpose
Yeah.
the emulator they're using for NSO and use that to release an individual title.
True.
Yeah. Well, Mother 3 came out in 2006, so hey, maybe when we get to 2026 for the 20th anniversary, maybe we'll get lucky.
That's the moment.
That's about where I'm at in optimism.
I'm laughing, but that's very possible.
All right. So yeah, those were I think the big new things from Nintendo, but they obviously showed off a lot more. They had a lot of trailers that gave updates on some games that they've previously announced in the past. What they started off the show with was a pretty dense trailer for Pikmin 4, which now has a release date, excitingly, for July 21st, which is great because I think some folks were a little bit worried it was going to get delayed. And yeah, it was a great trailer. I personally, I've never really played Pikmin, but I really was fascinated seeing how this, like, the camera angle is totally different, like a lot of people
Yeah.
suspected. It looks like it's going to play very similarly in a lot of ways, but it looks so different. I don't know. It's exciting. It made me want to go and play some of the older games and like, wow, this looks like it could be something special.
Yeah, I really love the new camera angle they're using, because it really makes it feel like you are tiny and everything is towering over you.
Yes.
Which is kind of what Pikmin is. And this just emphasizes that further.
And the fact that you can actually see the horizon is just amazing because it gives a totally different perspective to the world. Like you feel like you are in this garden actually exploring and you are very, very small. So the game just looks very, very nice. I really recommend you playing the past games, Nick, because I think all Pikmin games are really, really amazing. And I didn't expect that just seeing the trailers, because I think if you're not familiar with the series, you don't actually get what is fun about it. But then when you play and you get into all the micromanagement, all the stress of keeping your Pikmin alive in the time and everything, I think it's just a really, really great and original concept. So after 3 games that are relatively similar, I'm happy to see that Pikmin 4 is finally trying to change and shake up the formula a little bit. I can't say 100%, but I feel that this game will be a little more focused on the adventure aspect, on the action, instead of just the strategic part, the management part. Because with the new dog that you can mount, it gives me the impression that we have a lot of more action here. Oh, yeah, and the new camera angle just feels like you are in a classic adventure game. So I think it will be a little more focused on the actual action and the adventure.
Yeah, and it's also, I think the trailer showed the return of the dungeons, like there were in Pikmin 2, and those definitely emphasize more pure action rather than strategizing within a time limit. So I think that assessment's probably on the nose. Like that seems to be the direction they're going in.
Yeah, exactly, because when you are in the dungeon, the time is not passing. So it's that moment in the game where you can play free of the usual stress. My only issue is that I feel in Pikmin 2 some of the dungeons were really long, and when you enter the dungeon, you're kind of stuck in there, so you have to go to the end. So I hope that they fix some of those issues that I had with 2, even though I really like the concept of the dungeons.
Yeah, I hope it strikes a better balance, because like you said, 2 was just basically all dungeons all the time.
Yeah.
If this game mixes around the overworld with the dungeon crawling a bit more, and just has a bit more of an even split, I think it'll be much better.
Yeah,
now, when you guys are talking about the dungeons here, are you guys talking about at the end of the trailer where the thing has the glowing red eyes and the music, it's all brawl?
No, it's actually the cave. When you are inside the cave.
So there's underground segments where you go down like a vent, and you end up in these generally multi-floor caverns where, like Luis said, you don't have a time limit. It's basically just get through each floor, so find the exit and gather whatever treasures you might need along the way. And those were introduced in Pikmin 2. They're not in Pikmin 1 or 3. And that's basically what the focus of Pikmin 2 was just going through a whole bunch of different dungeons.
Well, I will say that this trailer absolutely made me more interested in the franchise to the point where I made sure, knowing that the eShop is closing soon, and I picked up Pikmin 1 and 2 so that I could see what this franchise is all about, hopefully before Pikmin 4 comes out, because this game just looks so charming. It absolutely just like oozes that Nintendo charm, you know?
And hey, Nick, just to give you a good about Pikmin, those games are not very long. So I think you can play them easily from beginning to end.
That is always appreciated in this day and age with so many games that are 100 hours. So I'm looking forward to doing that at some point.
Right. One last thing I did want to bring up, because you mentioned at the end of the trailer things with the red eyes. I think it's super cool that we're finally getting to see what happens at night in the Pikmin world. So in case...
Right, because you always have to go back to your ship, right?
Yes, the idea is that you have a strict time limit because when it shifts to nighttime, all the creatures on the planet get hyper-aggressive, and any Pikmin leave behind just die. Like, it's just awful. But we never actually seen what nighttime is like until this trailer. So now we're finally going to be able to explore that portion of the game that was kind of just left to imagination before then.
Expanding the lore.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I do remember hearing about that. I did notice, I don't think Pikmin 3 really had... Did Pikmin 3 not really have a timer? I know the first two games did.
It did.
But it was a little less strict. Okay.
Yeah, it was more of our survival stuff because you had to keep getting resources to keep you alive. But every day you have a
because I noticed when I was watching this, I noticed in this trailer that there really isn't anything on the screen. Like there's no timer, there's no HUD, there's nothing. It's just the game, which I love seeing that. It's
probably
stunning.
They are hiding the UI because it's a trailer.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, we will see. Pikmin 4 comes out July 21st, so that's really exciting. Everyone, go tell Arlo congratulations. I'm sure he's very excited as well.
His reaction was the first thing that I went to look after the direct.
I think, he's hilarious. The other thing that we saw and finally got to see more of was Advance Wars, which kind of fell off the radar last year. It was originally supposed to come out last spring, and then Nintendo delayed it because of world events, specifically, I think, in relation to everything going on in Ukraine right now. They just didn't feel like it was the right time to release that game. But now we know that it is still coming, and it is coming out soon, April 21st. And this is kind of a remake / reimagining of the first two Advance Wars games, with a very different art style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if there's much to say about these remakes at this point because we've been waiting for them for years. It's just nice that, hey, we finally know when it's releasing. God forbid it doesn't get delayed again.
Yeah, I was worried the game would actually disappear,
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see it back.
Yeah, it's just nice to have.
No,
I'm glad it's not releasing, because there was some rumor that popped up a couple of weeks ago that it was going to get shadow dropped, kind of like what ended up happening to Prime, funnily enough. And thankfully, no, because God knows there's enough things to be playing in February. So an April release date is nice.
Yeah, solid month before Breath of the Wild. I'm like, I think I can maybe squeeze this one in and check it out. So, yeah, I'm excited for that one for sure. We got a new trailer for Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which is right around the corner, coming out in February, just a week or two away, really, depending on when you're listening to this. And a lot of stuff that we've seen before, but the new thing that they showed off, and there's a preview up on the site as well if you want to hear more about it, is they're adding in a playable story epilogue to this very old Wii game that lets you play as Magolor. And it kind of sounds like it's almost like a Metroidvania in that you don't have any abilities at the start, but you have to explore and unlock new abilities to kind of progress, but you can do it in any order. I'm like, this sounds fairly substantial. and I want to know why.
I think.
Well, yeah.
Probably my favorite thing from the Switch era is when Nintendo sports in a game and they decide to add a whole new campaign, like we saw with Bowser's Fury, like we saw with Xenoblade Definitive Edition. So to see that they are continuing to do that with other franchises, I think it's the best way to motivate someone that already played the game to buy it again.
Yeah, it adds a lot of new value, and I think it also makes sense for Kirby specifically, because a lot of the recent games have had some form of epilogue to them. I think going back to Triple Deluxe, that had an epilogue with playing as DDD, I think. Planet Robot had something similar, playing as Meta Knight. Star Allies got one in an update, and Forgotten Lands started with an epilogue that you could play. It had one at launch, I should say. So adding one in kind of makes sense if this is just the general direction they're going with the Kirby franchise. And I think, like Luis said, it's also a very good way of trying to draw people in, along with the new minigame modes and whatnot. It's a good addition, and it's also something that probably isn't as hard to develop for, because Magolor, being a playable character in Star Allies, already had a moveset they could base off of, which seems to be like that's what you're building up to. You start off with a very depowered Magolor and build up to the monster that he's in Star Allies. He is insane in that game, and I assume that's kind of like the end point.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. I'm just surprised at how substantial it seems. Because a lot of times I feel like not always, but sometimes when Nintendo adds in new features, like I remember hearing with Pikmin 3 Deluxe, they included all the DLC from the Wii version, but other than like a few short side stories, there wasn't a ton of substantial stuff. It was mostly quality of life improvements.
Or stuff like P-Chat on New Super Mario Bros. U is usually very small.
Right. So yeah, it's nice that there's something more substantial. And I am curious about some of the new minigames they're adding in. They look fun, honestly. Yeah. I don't think it's a reason to buy the game for a lot of folks, but it looks cool.
Yeah, one of them is in the demo that we could try out, and it's pretty fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what else you can do. And in general, it should also be said, the presentation of the game is just amazing. It's so cute. It looks so pretty. I love it.
Yeah, at first I wasn't really sold on kind of the cell shaded borders around the characters. But the more I see of it, the less I'm like, I think I could enjoy this. I'm like, it's not like bad or anything. It's just different.
Yeah, I like it personally. I think it works, but yeah.
And it's funny because I think it's less noticeable because the art style is really cartoonish. But I think this is also a proper remaster. Like, a lot of the assets are being remade. A lot of the characters are, of course, the whole game is in HD. A lot of the textures have changed. So it is a proper upgrade compared to the one on the Wii, which already looked fine, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you guys. All right, I think it's about time we talk about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom before people start rioting in the streets. So yeah, this was the last thing actually that we saw in the Direct. Some folks were expecting, I think actually, myself too, we were all expecting, I think, a big blowout of this game because it comes out in May, and there's a pretty decent likelihood that this might be the last Direct we get before the game comes out. Maybe not, but yeah, Nintendo gave us, instead what they gave us was a very tight, very moody, very dramatic 2-minute trailer that definitely had a lot of, little details hidden in it to poke around and try and analyze. But it seemed the main thing they were trying to do was just kind of share more about the game's tone and the themes and maybe kind of hint at where the story is going. Right. I have been interested in this game for a long time, as I think many folks have. And this trailer, I think, was just what I wanted. Like, tell me more about what I can look forward to, but don't spoil too much,
Right. See, I feel like I'm on the other end. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not. I'm still very much looking forward to the game. I'm very excited, and I will be picking it up day one. But these trailers they're not hitting the right notes for me. They're good, and I like seeing new mechanics. But compared to, say, the one Breath of the Wild trailer they released at, I think it was E3. I think Luiz did an analysis of it on the channel at one point. Yeah. Where it's just like this huge bombastic performance where you're seeing all these different aspects of the world, all this gameplay, all the story. has like this beautiful pacing to it. These just aren't doing
You're talking
that.
about the one for like the Switch presentation, like the reveal for the Switch?
The one before that.
The one that came late.
For the
Was it
okay.
before? I thought it was after. Oh no, you're right. It would have been before. Yeah, I don't know. These just aren't doing it. They're not getting me, like, as an example, the Xenoblade 3 trailer got me hyped. I was very excited to the point that I was not paying attention to basically any of the announcements that were happening afterwards. This trailer got me excited, but in a kind of like, oh, this is neat, I'm looking forward to this kind of way. There's not...
Yeah.
I don't feel like they're showing enough here or framing it in a way that makes me just get super, super excited for the game. And I think they're saving that for probably a game-specific direct. I would imagine we'll probably get like a Zelda Tears of the Kingdom direct in like April or March. But so far, it just kind of... This trailer is just... It was paced the same way as the previous one. And I hope that it wouldn't be and that they would be showing off a little bit more. That's just my personal taste, though.
Yeah,
No, that's understandable.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I have some similar feelings about the trailer. You mentioned the trailer for Breath of the Wild. I think one of the biggest differences here is that those trailers for Tears of Kingdom, they are very disjointed. Like, they show stuff, but they don't give you the context. They don't give you enough to actually understand what is different about this game. So a lot of the time you have to try to take something from what is actually very little that they are showing. We have a lot of still scenes in the beginning of the trailer. At the end, we even have some 3 seconds of a black screen. So they are purposefully not showing a lot. And I don't know if this is a genius idea or if... Because a lot of people will buy Zelda because it's Zelda. Nintendo doesn't need to sell Zelda to a lot of people. But also there's tons of people who play Breath of the Wild and they want to know how this game differs from Breath of the Wild. Yeah. And when they see the same map on the trailer, the same gameplay mechanics, they are a little asking themselves why this game took 5 years to be developed. What is the hook here? How it differentiates itself from Breath of the Wild? And I'm positive that this game has a lot of stuff to show, but Nintendo is purposefully trying to not show. My bet is that we are going to see a specific direct because they have to announce the special Switch OLED model that leaked. Yeah. So I think that probably be on the direct, and I think then they will give you the option. If you want to get some spoilers, you watch this direct, because usually those specific directs are full of some spoilers. And if you want to preserve your experience, this is the last trailer for you, and then you go buy the game blind. And I think that's a nice way to see it, because it gives the option to both people, because I want to be excited and I want to see a hype trailer like the one in the Switch presentation for Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's great to know that the game is still coming out when it is. No more delays, it seems like.
Yeah.
It's still scheduled for May.
The game is probably
good.
ready, I think, at this point.
It seems that way. Worth noting that this is Nintendo's first $70 game.
Yeah.
It is their first, I mean, I guess that's not necessarily... I mean, games have, I'm sure in the past, like... If you were to go back and look at the entire history of Nintendo, I'm sure they've had games that cost more, but yeah, this is, they're following the current industry trend of increasing the price of some of their games. Now, they were quick to say that this is not going to be across the board for every upcoming Nintendo game, that they're going to be pricing games on a case-by-case basis. But it is interesting. It's interesting that this is the first game that they decided to charge $70 for. Just
to give you guys some perspective, this was actually international. So in Brazil, the new price is also above the original $6 that they used to cost, which was already a lot. So in particular here in Brazil, this news faced a lot of backlash because Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is confirmed to not come in Brazilian Portuguese. So, like, for us, it feels like they are asking for more, and they are not even giving us the possibility to play in our language, So it feels like a really steep price to pay at this moment. Of course, this is a regional perspective. Seen from an international point of view, I think this was expected because video games have costed $6 for a long time now. And of course, this was not the case in Brazil because inflation and a lot of that, but I know that they based the price from United States. So yeah, it's a bummer, but I can see why this is happening.
Right. I do think one thing to be pointing out with the price increase is that you can still get this with a game voucher at no additional cost.
I'll definitely do that. Yeah.
Because at that point, rather than saving $10, you're saving 20 on a game because it's still just the voucher. Which also makes me think this might be why they reintroduced the system when they did.
Yeah.
Is if they're going to have more varied pricing structure, they can compensate for that with the voucher system and also incentivize people to be picking up the games digitally, which is what they want to, not encourage the resale market.
Yeah, the discount is technically bigger if you're getting Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom with this method.
Yeah.
Yep, that was how I decided to finally bite the bullet and end up pre-ordering it. So, but yeah, they also showed off a collector's edition and an amiibo. I think the collector's edition is already sold out.
I have thoughts on the collector's edition.
Okay, please.
So it comes with, what is it? It's a steel book, a steel poster, 4 pins, and an art book, right?
Yeah, pretty standard.
It's $130. It's almost double the price of the game.
Yeah, but see, Nicholas, the thing you're forgetting is it's Zelda, so
right, but like
they can charge whatever they want.
It doesn't even come with like a statue like the original did. Like, what is making?
Yeah,
what is
weird,
giving the
right?
price increce here? Like
the statue
Xenoblade 3
is the amiibo, Nicholas. You're supposed to buy the amiibo. That's how you get the statue.
Get the amiibo in it though.
It's just what, do you think they're a charity? They're not gonna.
Yeah, well, it's just weird to me because I would have jumped on that immediately, even if I'm not like the consumer in me is like, even if I'm not super interested in like getting a pin or a steel book or steel poster, I want to have it to collect it. But at $130, that is steep. Like the Xenoblade 3 one was 90, and it had the steel book, it had the art book. Is it just the steel poster and the pins that are bumping up the price that much? It's just so bizarre to me.
Just a question: is this being sold?
You're not a true collector, then, Nicholas.
Is this being sold in like all stores, or is like a Nintendo stores thing?
It's not. No, thank God,
okay.
it's not.
Okay.
No, I think the Xenoblade one is very much just because they had all the problems where they had to ship the thing separately.
Oh yeah, true. I remember.
Please never do that again unless you actually fix your store and have an actual good pre-order policy in place. A queue system or something, but regardless, it's just weird that it's costing $60 extra to me. I don't really understand it.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. I generally don't buy a lot of collector's editions, kind of for that reason. I'm like, that's a whole other game right there, But
yeah, like that is so much. It's like side note, it's like the Octopath Traveler 2 Special Edition, which is like $180. Like, that's great, but man, I could buy 3 Octopath Traveler 2s at that price.
There you go. It's basic math, folks. Yeah, well, all that said, lots to be excited about with Tears of the Kingdom. And yeah, we will be talking about it when it comes out, absolutely. Real quick, we got another trailer for Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon. Nothing really super big to report, just I think the game looks great. I like seeing more of that art style. It reminds me a lot of like Okami, It's definitely got similar aesthetic sensibilities, I'd say. And that game is still coming out pretty soon, March 17th. So I'm curious to see how that one does.
Same. I'm glad we got to see the first real, like, this is what the gameplay is going to be like. I still feel like I need a better understanding of the structure, so I might hold off on the game for a little bit. I get the impression it might be like a dungeon structure, like a Zelda game, because in some of there's a previews for the game that released, I think last week, that mentioned going through the first dungeon. So I guess that could be how it's structured, like a loose overworld and then separate dungeons you go into, which would be interesting. I know
it seems to be puzzle heavy.
Yeah, they showed that you unlock different abilities for, I think mostly for Cheshire. Like they showed him near the end of the trailer, like growing vines or like I think shooting out water. or using himself as a shield. So it might be Zelda-like in terms of like going into different dungeons to unlock different abilities, which would basically be like your items, and using those to progress, which I would be into. In that way, it would also be Okami-like. So, and I love Okami.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's just such a unique game. I wasn't really, when I first saw this and I saw this $60 price tag, I was like, this is either much more substantial than it looks, or this is a Nintendo doing Nintendo kind of thing.
Yeah, it's too experimental for me to jump on that right away.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks are going to want to wait and see reviews and be like, all right, what exactly is this? I mean, we have a better sense of it now, but yeah, it's a lot to ask, especially with, I think, Bayonetta 3 coming out not too long ago and just all the other stuff coming out right now. But yeah. All right, let's talk about DLC. We got quite a bit of DLC news in this Direct. And Nicholas, you mentioned Xenoblade Chronicles 3 earlier. I know you're excited.
I did.
What are you excited about?
Well, first of all, I have to say, hearing the words roguelike used in relation to Xenoblade Chronicles 3 gave me the most mental whiplash I've had in like months.
Yeah,
what was up with that?
That was a great. It's a great
new
idea.
Gameplay mode. It's great. I love it. It's just not something I ever would have expected.
Yeah, it's. I mean, where else do you go with? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some great story content coming in, but yeah, I mean, for folks that just want more Xenoblade all the time, it's perfect. I mean, give them a mode with that type of structure.
It's a really cool idea. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, in general, just, the content that's coming out, I guess this week, by the time this podcast goes up, it's going to be a bit more content to delve into. I was hoping we would get details on, like, them adding new difficulty modes, because those were data mined around launch. That doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know if they've just cut the idea of introducing other difficulty modes or whatnot, but regardless of that, this is still new content. It's fun. I really like the roguelike mode. I'm very interested in testing that out because that's going to be a very different way of tackling fights, where before you could rely on like just your huge party decimating things if you spec them a certain way, and here you're going to have to play a lot more on the fly, just kind of figuring out what you can do with what you're given, which I think will be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. That being said, that was not the main focus of the trailer. I mean, technically it was, but it's not the thing that everyone focused on.
Yeah, I know you're looking forward to that last story DLC coming.
So Luiz, what the hell?
I like they showed us. I think was 10 seconds of the.
It was 20 seconds of footage. It was
the
20
most mind-blowing footage that they could show us in that amount of time.
They broke the Xenoblade community in 20 seconds.
I was caught completely off guard because I was okay. They're going to show Volume 3 and that's it.
I mean, that opening shot. The opening shot is him in the air with like what? What?
No, that's insane. And
it's great. For non-Xenoblade people, this is amazing.
Yes, please explain. Okay.
In a way, think of like this is the latest Spider-Man movie when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield showed up.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
It's that energy.
The same level. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I'm hearing everyone like being all excited about this, and I'm like, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm glad everyone else is excited. This must be some cool throwback reference kind of situation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we see like a glimpse of a new area. The character at the end is I don't know how I can word this without giving spoilers, but it's one of the founders, which is super exciting because it gives us a timescale of when this is going to be.
I mean, after the initial shock, I think the most logical conclusion is that all those characters are some of the founders because you can more or less link them to the statues. Yeah,
well, the first two aren't. Those are the mentors.
Oh, I see.
If you remember.
Okay,
if you remember
that makes sense.
But we have another founder that's confirmed, so we might just get founder origin story and they'll be party members. Although I still have a suspicion that Noah is going to be a party member because of the Veiled Sword being on the thumbnail for the DLC.
Oh, God.
That's something we're going to have to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that this confirms is basically that this will be a prequel But even
Yes.
okay, I think yes.
And also like this is finally addressing so many of the things that Xenoblade 3 was left just threw out there and didn't do anything with. And it's also something that I don't know if I had mentioned when we had recorded discussions. One of the theories I had is that the director made the base game pretty newcomer friendly. Like intentionally did not introduce many spoilery elements or elements that referenced story beats of the previous games, so that it would be something newcomers could just jump in and play and not have to worry. And then he would put all of the spoiler, like, super heavy connection stuff into the DLC. And that's not something I was sure would happen. This is exactly what is happening.
The fact that we are seeing... I'm going to call him A. Everyone knows who A is. The fact that we are seeing A here just showed that we are going to get a lot of answers. Right. About plus, all the stuff that we did not have answers.
It might actually be console A, which was the missing letter. Like,
yeah, it makes total sense. It makes total sense.
Oh, it's so exciting, and it was only 20 seconds, and we're probably gonna get new footage like in the summer or something.
I'm super excited for that. Yeah. That's going to be awesome.
That stole the show for me, more so than Zelda did.
Yeah. I don't really know what any of the things you just said meant, but I'm excited for the Xenoblade community, and I hope to someday be excited in the same way about Xenoblade.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
You guys were saying
to
if
feel
I
so
end
excited.
up playing the first game that things will start to connect. That was what you were saying, Nicholas, I think. Earlier.
Well, I think depending on what they show, because this is showing elements of the first game, and if you had just played the first game and not second or third, you might not quite understand how those elements connect.
You'll be hyped and confused.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think as they show more of this DLC expansion, if they show certain other aspects, that might become far more spoilery, where even with less context, you might start putting things together in a way that you're not supposed to, assuming that you haven't played like 2 or 3 yet.
Interesting.
But we'll see. Also, I know this is an expansion pass, like story DLC. I want this to be 60 hours. I want it to be 80 hours. I want it to be 120 hours.
Please. It's careful what you wish for. We're just
Give me a 200-hour
how
expansion pass story.
Oh yeah, I can understand you there, but I think it will be along the lines of Torna. Maybe a little bit more, but yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, I'm expecting 40 hours at most.
That would be awesome. I think 30 hours is already a lot. But
yeah, I think like 40 hours for completion at most is probably what they would be aiming for. I would imagine this is going to be a little bit longer than Torna because it feels like they probably have more to show off and more to go over. But we'll have to see. I really... And I think... I want this to be substantive.
And I think ultimately...
Well, Nicholas, let's be honest. Even if it is only like a 40-hour... Only a 40-hour...
Even if it's just like a 20-minute movie, I would take it.
Yeah. Even if it's a 40-hour story, you're still going to find a way to make it 80 hours, let's be honest.
True. Guilty as charged.
All right, we should move on because we still have a lot to get through. I'm going to kind of try and quickly get through the rest of this DLC. So, no, I don't want to get through this one too quickly, but the Splatoon 3 expansion pass. We knew there was some paid content coming to Splatoon 3. Now we kind of have a better sense of what that's actually going to look like. So there's 2 waves of content. The first wave, and I don't really understand why they're doing this, but it's interesting. They're bringing back Inkopolis, the hub world from the first Splatoon, and you can just go there, I guess. They basically said, you can go in all the shops, but it's going to be the same stuff you could buy at the shops in the main hub, but the Squid Sisters are performing there, so that's cool, I guess.
Yeah.
It seems a little random, but
it's definitely something where I think it's going to get some people very excited for nostalgia reasons. But from a pure content, like gameplay perspective, it's not adding anything new. It's just basically a cosmetic reskin, which I'm kind of... Again, it's neat, like you said, but it's not something that I'm going to jump on.
Yeah, it's hard to see
Unless
the actual
there's something
value.
they're not telling us. Yeah. And then, but the more substantial thing is that they're adding a new side story to the game that they're calling Side Order. And it's got a very interesting aesthetic. It's all black and white, and we didn't see a lot of it, but it's very moody, and it's implying that there's some trippy story lore stuff going on.
Yeah, there's been a lot of theorizing in the community regarding that. Like brainwashing, going back in time, nuclear fallout, I think was one of them. Based on like some of the, average Nintendo game stuff.
Sure, yeah, it's baseline Nintendo absurdity for sure.
So there's a lot going on there. And that's something that I think is definitely far more interesting to me and to probably a lot of people. One thing that's kind of interesting, and this is completely unconfirmed, but when they were showing off the DLC waves, there were like 4 little tabs, each a different color, and the first wave was the color of the first tab, and the side order was the color of the third. So that's made some people theorize that there's going to be 2 more waves of content, possibly one that adds in the Splatoon 2 hub, and then the 4th one that adds in another story, which is interesting. I don't know if it would be part of this expansion pass, because it would be weird to advertise it as being only 2 waves of content when they actually have 4. That wouldn't make much sense. But it almost makes me wonder if they're planning on having a second one after this one concludes. Like, pay an additional $25 to have this other content. I don't know.
It's possible. I'm sure they want this game to have a long life if they can. So, I could see it happening. But yeah, as it is right now, we don't have a ton of info about what this new side story is, but it's certainly got people's minds racing.
And
and speaking of racing, we got another look at the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. Wave 4 of tracks we now know is coming sometime this spring. They showed off an entirely new course. It's a Yoshi's Island course, not to be confused with the existing Yoshi courses. This is a totally new one. But I think the even bigger surprise on top of this course, which looks like a lot of fun, is they're adding in a new character. They're adding in Birdo. She's back after all these years.
I'm just super happy that they are adding characters. I think it was such a missed opportunity to not do that right now.
It does make sense. It's just so funny the direction this is taking, right? Like, first it was, we're 5 years in, here's a whole bunch of like new courses. And they're all returning courses. Then it's like, also there's some new courses among the returning courses. Also now we're also getting returning characters. Like,
it's like it's like there's no plan. They're developing as
they're moving
goes.
the goalposts, but towards us.
Which
nice,
is great.
Nice.
At this
because
point, they're
I
going to
was
start
super
adding in new
depressed at the
battle
beginning.
maps.
But no, this is great. The new track looks like fun. Getting characters is fantastic. It's a bit of a shame that we don't have a release date for this yet. But regardless, it's the same thing that I think they did with the last wave of DLC, where we just got a little preview of it beforehand, because I think there were a lot of complaints with the second wave where they just did not show anything for months until we were a week away from the content dropping. And I think they probably recognized, like, people did not like that. So now they're just making sure that, hey, we want you to know this still exists. It's going to be dropping at some time. Here's a preview of what's happening.
Yep. Yeah, it's coming, and we know it'll be here in the next few months. But yeah, I actually don't mind kind of I know that when it comes out, like, they'll give us like a week or 2 notice, and I'll be able to be like, all right, well, I'll just pop in and check out the new courses, and I've been really enjoying doing that so far, personally.
Yeah.
And then the last little piece of, well, not little piece, but the last DLC they showed off was the expansion pass for Fire Emblem Engage. And this one, I personally don't have too much to say about it, other than they're adding in some new emblems. So, new characters that have their own missions attached to it. Which, again, I feel kind of weird about, because that's kind of the whole premise of the whole game, is that, like, you're getting these emblems, but it's weird that they're making some of them as DLC, but most of them are already in the game. I don't know. It's just a little bit strange to me. It doesn't feel super, like, substantial. They are adding a new story in Wave 4 they talked about, It's a Xenologue story. We don't really know anything about it. It's a ways away, is kind of what they were implying, but yeah, more Fire Emblem.
I mean, I'm sure for people that have played Engage, this is probably nice to just have a little bit of extra content. I'm with you on the emblems. That seems like a very small addition, all things considered. You get like a new map to obtain them, but the emblems themselves I don't feel like they would add much mechanically, I guess. Maybe that's just having not played the game.
Additional options in combat, right? Yeah.
Right. It's just, I don't know. It seems a little odd to me, but it's still neat. It's neat to have regular content. And like you said, I also think probably the DLC story is what most people have their eyes on. That's probably what people are really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think generally Nintendo is really on the game with expansion pass, né? Like they are totally in love with it right now. Almost every game that releases has an expansion pass, or even games that already released a long time ago. So I always buy for the big stuff that comes at the end, and I feel that sometimes it's a little hard to justify with the initial volumes that they are releasing. A lot of the time I feel that's not enough content. In the past, for example, I remember the expansion pass for Breath of the Wild, and I think both volumes were pretty great. They had tons of stuff. So it just feels that with some of those, I think Splatoon 3 is probably the worst for me, but it feels like it's just something to chew before the story stuff actually comes out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like sometimes they're just trying to check boxes, you know, being like, all right, well, every game has to have some kind of paid DLC now. So, you know, let's come up with something. Oh, new characters, I guess, you know, that's enough, you know. And I don't know, not trying to say like there's no work or thought put into it, but yeah, when every game has an expansion pass and they all are kind of following this kind of similar model, I don't know. That's how it feels to me a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk through. Believe it or not, we have not talked about any third-party games yet in this Direct. And there's stuff worth talking about. I actually want to start with talking about something that totally came out of the blue for me. Level 5 is back, baby.
Yep.
Yes!
Man, like, what a surprise. So for those who aren't super looped in, Level 5 is the developer probably best known for Professor Layton and for Yokai Watch. I'd say those are kind of the big things that most people know them for. And they were here in the Western market for a long time, but it was a few years ago that they basically said, we're leaving the Western market. We're not going to be releasing games to Western markets anymore. We're going to be focusing on the Japanese market. And that was sad news for a lot of folks because we're like, shoot, we're never going to get Yokai Watch 4. That's never coming over. Still no word on that. But, you know, folks were like, oh, we're never going to see more Professor Layton. Well, this Direct, man, it was exciting. Level 5 announced a couple games. They announced a new Professor Layton game, for one. They announced a new Fantasy Life game, which I don't think was on anyone's bingo card. And they announced a brand new IP called Deca Police. So, yeah, they're coming back in a big way.
Yep. It's definitely exciting. Even if there's not a particular interest in the games announced here, which I think, you know, there's enough things here that will probably grab most people's attention. Just the fact that they are willing to be releasing games in the West again is exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was watching the Direct, and when Deca Police appeared, I was like, oh, this is super interesting. And there was like a specific shot where he was like pointing his finger to the screen, and I was like, okay, this is very Professor Layton. Could you imagine if this is a level 5 game? And then by the end, Deca Police appeared in level 5 at the top. I was like, completely, because it looks like such a not a super budget game, but in a budget that level 5 would not work nowadays. So it looks like a big JRPG and stuff like that. So, and then after that, when Professor Layton appeared, I think the message was pretty clear that level 5 was back. And like, Professor Layton is my favorite series from them. I love the ones on the 3DS. I played some of the ones on the DS, and I just wanted to see a I was expecting, to be honest, a Professor Layton collection. So to see a new game is fantastic. It's like something that I wasn't even expecting at this point.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Yeah, I've played a couple Layton games over the years, mostly back in the DS days. And so yeah, it's really cool to see that one come back. We don't really know anything about the new Professor Layton game. It's called Professor Layton in the World of Steam, the New World of Steam. But it doesn't have a release window yet. But we know Fantasy Life, that game is called Fantasy Life I. I don't know what the I stands for. But Fantasy Life I, the girl who steals time. What'd you say, Nicholas?
I said for iPhones, clearly.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. Sponsored by Apple. Yeah, that's really cool because Fantasy Life as a franchise has basically been dead since the 3DS days. And it's a great time for it. I mean, it's a farm. We're in farming sim fever right now, and yeah, Fantasy Life has always been kind of unique in that you know all the different jobs you can have, and the overall ambition of it is I think different than a lot of the farming sim games. So yeah, that's cool. And then yeah, Deca Police, Luiz, I'm with you. This was awesome. It, in a way, I mean, it's hard not to compare like the overall like premise to something like Astral Chain where you're a detective and you're going through and fighting stuff, but the art style is totally different and it looks a little more mystery focused, and I'm sold on this one, man. This looks cool.
Yeah, I want to see more of the actual RPG mechanics, but the setting is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
at first
that's
I remember
true.
when he first appeared, I was thinking that it was the game from the Dragarampa creator. I think it's Raincode. Yeah. So I was a little confused, but then I noticed it was a different game, and I was okay. Now it's two games to be excited about, so that's great.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. Beyond level 5, we got a lot of kind of interesting, I think, throwbacks to games and genres that we haven't seen in a long time. One of the first games from the third parties that we saw in this direct was Samba de Amigo Party Central, which, again, I don't think on anyone's bingo card, a new Samba de Amigo game in 2023. It's wonderful.
It's always funny when I see this game because the title is totally in Portuguese, so it always feels weird to hear people saying Samba de Amigo, which is basically samba of a friend. And the funniest thing is that the game does not actually play Brazilian samba. I think it's more of a from other Latin countries.
Well, not even that. It's like pop songs and stuff. Like it's a total mismatch. It's just like a rhythm game where you just with maracas as the premise.
Yeah,
basically.
I think Sega probably.
But they have sombreros. Isn't that
samba,
enough?
So no, sombrero has nothing to do with samba.
What about monkeys?
It's just funny.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. But they 100% need to release little plastic maracas that we can slot our Joy-Cons into.
Oh, that's
I mean,
awesome.
it's essential. Yeah. I mean, I think they did that. I mean, I know that was kind of the whole gimmick of the original game. I can't remember. They put out a Wii version of Samba de Amigo, and I can't remember if that
2007,
one had
I think.
or not.
And that did have maracas accessories, so.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it was the Wii, of course it did.
Oh, that's right. Why I shouldn't have even asked. I should have just known, honestly. So yeah, that was random but exciting. We also got a game that is going to appeal to all the folks who love Style Savvy, which is Nintendo's kind of fashion-forward franchise. There's a new game being published by Exceed called Fashion Dreamer, which looks like it's kind of trying to echo Style Savvy in a little bit. Seems different in that it doesn't look like you're like running a store. It seems the premise they were talking about it was you're an influencer and you have to, come up with fashion
YouTuber
for the people on the streets. Yeah. It's a more modern approach. I can definitely see it.
It's interesting. It looked like you were able to actually make your own clothes in it, which is not a feature that... I mean, I'm not exactly deep into the fashion game meta, but I don't think that's a feature I've seen in many games before, like actually being able to craft your own clothes and wear those.
Yeah, it seems fairly detailed. So yeah, I think there's definitely a pretty big audience of folks who will be excited about that for sure.
Yeah, I'll probably wait for reviews on this one because I really want to see the gameplay. I'm joking. I think a lot of people will enjoy this game. Yeah, there's definitely an audience for that on the Switch.
Totally. Yeah. All right, now we got to talk about some of these throwbacks that are coming. We're getting some. What's old is new again on Nintendo Switch was also a big theme in this direct. So first of all, we're getting a port of Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, which was one of Capcom's most unique games on the Nintendo DS. This was a big surprise. I don't know why this is coming now, but it's cool. I mean, there's not really a great way to play this game. Yeah.
It's
between. Go on, Nicholas.
Yeah, This is a game. I think it's made by the director of the first Ace Attorney, Shu Takumi. Ooh. It's such a cool original little title that Capcom put out that is so hard to find on the DS nowadays. I think it got like an iOS port, just a mobile port that I played a little bit, like over half a dozen years ago, because they had a short demo you could play the game, and I'd heard how good the game was and how original and unique it was, and it's so much fun, but I've never been able to actually finish it, because back then I never actually finished the demo because I didn't have the income to just be spending on random mobile games.
Sure.
But now it's actually on Switch, assuming it doesn't have... I'm hoping it won't come at a huge price point. Like, I would go up to $30. I wouldn't want to pay $40 for this necessarily, but
yeah,
regardless, it's a way to experience the game again, and it's such a unique and interesting and just fun experience, a different kind of like puzzle narrative experience, and I hope that this could lead into just some interest surging up for this style of game. I mean, we haven't gotten a new Ace Attorney in years, so if they're just going to make a Ghost Trick 2, I'd be fine with that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you don't really see a lot. This game was just one of those weird experimental DS games that we just don't see a lot of games in this style anymore. And yeah, you're right. It's pretty widely regarded as a classic puzzle game on the DS, and so yeah, to see it come back and made it accessible is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Nicholas. I actually also played a little bit of the iOS version, but I never finished it. So yeah, this is my chance to redeem myself.
Nice.
I everyone that talks about this game say that it is awesome. So I always wanted to play this, but I just wanted to mention that between this and Professor Layton, Etrian Odyssey, Advance Wars, I'm just happy to see that the Switch truly is the Nintendo Portable Console, because we are receiving all these games from the 3DS era, from the DS era, and looking at all of them in the Direct is just awesome to see.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think the Switch is going to go down in history as just having one of the most varied libraries of any Nintendo console. I mean, we're at the point now where whether you're looking for classics or you're looking for new games, even first-person shooters and stuff, like everything pretty much is going to be on here in some way, shape, or form. So it's really cool to see. You mentioned Etrian Odyssey, Luiz, and yeah, that was another, I think, really exciting thing. Etrian Odyssey is getting 3 of its games remastered for the Switch in what they're calling the Etrian Odyssey Origins collection. And that's exciting because Etrian Odyssey hasn't had any release at all since the 3DS. And it shows that at the very least there's still interest in the franchise from Atlas. So that's awesome. Yeah. This is a pretty pricey package, I will say. So each of these games are selling for $40 individually. You can get all 3 of them together for $80, which I think is a little bit higher than I would expect. But these are all also massive, massive games. So yeah, if you want some Etrian Odyssey, you're gonna have about easily 150 hours worth of content if you pick up this trilogy.
Yeah. I think they also mentioned in a press release that they were developing a new Etrian Odyssey, like an original title. And this is kind of just a precursor, I guess, of that. They figured out, hey, this is the method we want to have this specific user interface work on the system, and we're just kind of throwing it out there and seeing how people react. And I imagine they'll probably influence the development of a potential future game.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense because these games have always just been synonymous with, you're using the touchscreen to draw your maps, and you can turn on auto mapping in this new version, which I think will be helpful for a lot of folks. But, for the folks who actually like drawing their own maps, I'm not sure if it's going to be quite the ideal way to play.
That was definitely the one hesitance of these games were designed. They were so intrinsically tied to the DS and 3DS's dual screen design that just porting them over, I imagine, can't be easy. And even with them being ported over, I don't know if these will technically be the ideal way to play it. I imagine quite a few people might still prefer to play the original DS ones just for that experience of actually hand drawing the map with a stylus on the bottom screen.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. But regardless, it's nice to see again that there's still interest in the franchise, and totally.
Yeah, and I hope this is maybe a sign that we'll see more Atlus RPGs from the 3DS in the future, because I think Atlus had an amazing output on the 3DS with stuff like, I think it's Soul Hacker it's called, I think it's Shin Megami Tensei 4. There were tons of JRPGs that Atlus released on the 3DS, and that I think they would be nice to see on the Switch.
What would make a lot of sense at this point would be releasing the Persona Q games on the Switch.
Oh yeah,
because now we actually have Persona games, mainline Persona games we can play on Switch. So it's not like we're just throwing random spin-offs with characters we don't know.
Yeah,
no, that's a great point. Yeah, I could see them maybe bundling those games together at some point. So another just, again, these games just keep on coming. Another very exciting left field remaster that I know has had Brian, the owner of the site, super excited, was Baten Kaitos. Oh my gosh, what a throwback. Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, which are GameCube era RPGs that have a kind of unique card-based combat system.
From Monolith.
Yeah, from Monolith. Yeah, these games are coming to the Switch, which is just wild.
I am excited. I've never played these games. They're Monolith Soft games, so I'm going to play them. That's it.
That's basically the way I'm thinking, but I'm also willing to question Bandai Namco why we are receiving this and we are
not Xenosaga
about Xenosaga.
Right? Yeah. No, that is weird.
Oh man, it's the perfect moment to release Xenosaga with Xenoblade being so successful and all that.
Yeah,
no, it's true.
But I'm happy for everyone who likes them.
Yeah, I didn't realize these were Monolith Soft games actually until people started talking about it.
They are not from Tetsuya Takahashi, the director of the Xenoblade series, but they are from Monolith Soft.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, no, it's I don't really know much about these games, but the GameCube didn't have a ton of RPGs, and these were definitely some of the standout RPGs on that platform. So I'm hoping at some point I'll be able to check them out, but these are also huge time sinks. So
you're
gonna want to clear your schedule for these too.
I also think, because if I recall correctly, there was a job listing for Bandai Namco for a Nintendo remaster they were working on. I wonder if this is what that was.
Oh.
Is this a Bandai Namco game? Oh, you're right.
Yeah, it's being developed by them.
Is this remaster is exclusive for Nintendo?
I believe so.
As far as I'm aware, yeah. I haven't seen it popping up on any of the other storefronts.
Which I mean, I think it makes sense because weren't the original Baten Kaitos GameCube exclusives?
I think it was.
Yes, I believe they were. Yeah. No, yeah, it's super cool. It's another piece of history that's being preserved. Yeah, I think a lot of folks associate these games. I don't think they're Nintendo IP, but it kind of feels like it because of just how tightly people associate it with the GameCube. So
yeah, I think it was originally published by Namco, which is probably why they're working on this.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. One other kind of old game coming back that has had our new video team in particular very excited. a couple years ago, we got a remaster of Katamari Damacy, the original game called Katamari Damacy Reroll, which, by the way, is getting a trial via Switch Online starting February 20th. But in this Direct, they announced that We Love Katamari, which is one of the sequels to the game. I'm not sure if it was the second Katamari game, but yeah, that game is also getting a remaster on the Switch. And the full name, I gotta be correct here, is called We Love Katamari Reroll plus Royal Reverie.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
My understanding is that similar to what Nintendo's been doing with adding extra content to re-releases, the Royal Reverie is new content regarding, I think, the King of All Cosmos as a child, and you play as him, I think?
So basically, this is the Bowser's Fury of Katamari Damacy.
It is the Bowser's Fury of Katamari Damacy Reroll.
That's very exciting. Yeah, I don't have a ton of familiarity with this franchise. I did play a little bit of Katamari Damacy Reroll when it came out, but I can't remember. I think I played a demo for the Switch version, and I had problems with that demo. Like, it didn't seem to work right for me.
I had
like,
a
the
similar
controls
experience.
just were quirky. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm gonna give it another try with the trial that's coming out, and yeah, this game is absurd. So if you just want the most bonkers, early 2000s gaming experience you can have, I don't think you can really beat this. Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about old games and stuff coming back. We did get a few brand new stuff. So the standout kind of indie that was shown off that was brand new is called Harmony: The Fall of Reverie. And this one is notable, I think, partially because it's published by Don't Nod, which is the studio behind Life is Strange, and they've released some other games over the years. It's actually amazing to me how much that studio is putting out. I mean, on top of all the Life is Strange games, they put out that kind of, the name escapes me right now, but it was kind of like a crime mystery thriller a couple years ago. And then they also put out oh gosh, all their game names are escaping me right now. But they put out a few projects, and they're working on another like very next-gen medieval fantasy game. But yeah, this one looks really cool. This one seems like a bit of a smaller, more bite-sized experience. And we don't really know too much about it, but we know there's an element of you're visiting some of the characters that you meet in the real world in your dreams, and that there's a lot of branching story paths. They show off a flow chart in the trailer, so you already know if that's that's the type of game that appeals to you. Yeah, I'm intrigued by this one. I love the art style, and I love Don't Nod's games.
Yeah, it looks good. I'm still a little confused what exactly the gameplay consists of, because for the most part it seems like a visual novel style game. The game is listed as adventure and strategy on Nintendo's website, though, so I don't know, but it seems interesting. I like the art style they're using, and the story has a neat hook.
Yeah, most of their games have some level of like adventure element, so I would be surprised if it was a straight visual novel. But yeah, it looks really intriguing, and I'm interested to see more of it. This one I'm not super excited about. It's called Omega Strikers. It's a free-to-play top-down sports game. It's a multiplayer-focused game. It's also coming to Switch, and it's coming to Switch, PC, and mobile. Nothing in this one really jumped out at me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just there's so many games like this on the market. It's hard for anything new to come in and actually distinguish itself in a meaningful way. Because it's not like this looks bad, it's just there's so many other things that basically look just like this, but with a different sport, or with a different number of players, or what have you.
Yeah,
right.
You can kind of feel what a type of game it is.
Yeah.
Right. Which, again, yeah, like, nothing against this type of game, but I think just with how much great stuff was in this Direct, I think this one it's going to kind of be overlooked, I think, by a lot of folks.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe if it was like a shadow drop, that would be something worth trying out, because it is free, so excitement from the Direct, could have people trying it out. With it coming out, in late April, I don't know there's going to be much lingering excitement for it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Well, we did get one other kind of sports game shown off, and this one is actually a little bit notable. So we really just saw a glimpse of it in the sizzle reel at the end of the Direct. But Konami has a baseball franchise that has really only ever been in Japan called WBSC eBaseball. And it's just never come over to the West for some reason. But these games are really popular over there. I think it's an annual franchise.
Right.
It's
some of them have in the past. They haven't in quite a while, but I know there was at least one Power Pros game on the Wii that came out. That came out stateside.
It's been a long time though.
It has been a long time, yeah.
Yeah. This was so they're releasing. It came out the same day as the Direct, and it's called WBSC eBaseball Power Pros. And what's really interesting about this is a 99-cent game. And it sounds like it is basically just, online multiplayer baseball. I think maybe some local modes, but there's not really a full campaign mode or anything. But even still, the game looks pretty fun, and for 99 cents, I was like, yeah, I'll pick this up. Why not?
I wonder what the rationale is for pricing at 99 cents as opposed to just it being free to play.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine if it's that low price, they have some in-game monetization. I would assume. And at that point, I don't know if having people shell out $1 extra would necessarily help it.
It feels like public service just to make the
on principle, we don't give away our games for free. Puts it 1 cent.
I haven't heard anything about in-game transactions with this game. They might be in there, but I haven't heard anything about it.
I mean, if it's not, then that's just this cheap baseball game you can try. Why not?
Well, what they said in a press release was they kind of wanted to test the waters and see if this game could reach a more global audience, and this is kind of their way of doing that. And I think it kind of makes sense. I'm like, if folks won't buy this for 99 cents, will they buy a $60 game?
Right.
So I could kind of see it. I'm excited to try it at some point. I like sports games more than I like actually watching sports, and baseball's I feel is a bit underrepresented. So
yeah, we didn't get Mario Sluggers. All the rumors were wrong.
Did not. Nor did we get baseball and Wii Sport, or not Wii Sports, Nintendo Switch Sports.
What, do you think that game doesn't have enough content? It got golf. Come on.
That's a great point, Nicholas. I hate to offend anyone. Yep. All right. There's a lot to talk about. If it sounds like we're losing steam, I apologize. It's so many games. It is truly shocking how much they can pack into a 40-minute Direct. So we saw plenty more third-party games. Most of what we saw that we haven't talked about yet were release date updates, basically. So we got a new trailer for Master Detective Archives, Raincode. That game finally has a release date locked down for June 30th. I think this one still looks great. I mean, the more we see of it, I'm like, yes, please, I want to play this. By the creators of Danganronpa, I think is what has a lot of folks interested in this one for sure.
Yep. Octopath Traveler 2 also had a brief segment. I think it was just 30 seconds. It's basically, hey, there's a demo out. You can go play it.
Yeah. And that demo for Octopath Traveler 2, they said the data transfers over to the full game. So it's basically a head start on that game if you're planning on picking it up.
Basically, Square Enix has been doing a lot of that recently.
Right. All the, I think it's the Team Asahi games, like Triangle Strategy, Bravely Default, Octopath, all have a demo that releases a month before that you can do a save data transfer. This one just kind of, I find weird because instead of it being a cutoff, a a story or gameplay cutoff, where once you get to like the end of a chapter, it cuts you off. It's a time cutoff. So after 3 hours, you stop playing, apparently, which I don't get because that's not how they did it for the others. But oh well, it's still 3 hours of the game.
A funny one that I always remember is the one for Dragon Quest XI. The demo is like 10 hours of the game. Like the first 10 hours, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was a big demo. Yeah. Sea of Stars, also the much hyped indie RPG, also got a demo. So that's great, and got a release date for August 29th. I know a lot of folks are looking forward to that RPG. So yeah, that's really cool. We also got release dates for Disney Illusion Island, which is the new original Disney Mickey Mouse 2D platformer, which I'm actually really curious about because Disney is making games again after a long time of them not really using much of their own IP for stuff. So I'm really curious to see what they'll do with this one, personally. They're also making a Tron game, which we've known about for a little while. It's called Tron Identity. It's a visual novel made by Mark Bithell, which is just okay, cool. Yeah, Tron is like at a little bit of a comeback right now. There's a new Tron ride at Disney World. It's like they're saying it's their fastest roller coaster they've ever made. So
I wonder if they're gearing up for a new movie. Yeah, well,
it kind of seems that way. Yeah. Because why else would they be making this game now of all times? But yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then the last kind of big thing that they gave an update on was the Dead Cells Return to Castlevania DLC, which we now know is coming on March 6th. That's going to be some pretty meaty DLC for that game, which has already had many expansion packs. So it's also the first kind of real big Castlevania use of that license that we've seen in quite a while. So yeah, so lots of great stuff. Now it's worth noting that in the Japanese Nintendo Direct, they showed off some additional announcements, and some of them are actually coming to the West, which is really cool. I don't know why they didn't put these in the North American Direct. Maybe it was just a time thing, but yeah, there's some bonus news coming out of the Japanese Direct. So yay, bonus news. So probably the most notable thing from that is that Koei Tecmo and Gust, who are known for their Atelier franchise, which is definitely, it seems like even beyond an annual franchise at this point. We're getting Atelier Ryza 3 really soon, but we're also getting a remake of the very first ever Atelier game called Atelier Marie. And they are remaking that game. It'll be the first time that game is coming to Western shores. So it's a really cool little project. It also has kind of a different style than some of the other Atelier games. Atelier Ryza and most of their RPGs are played out very much as like a traditional third-person RPG. This one takes a little bit more of a top-down approach, and it actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the Link's Awakening remake that we got in terms of like it
looks very cute.
Yeah, I've never played an Atelier game, and I feel like this one could be a really great place to start. So I'm really excited for this one. I like these little bite-sized RPGs that we get sometimes. You know,
yeah.
little bit smaller in scale. And then the other kind of Western-focused announcement that we got from this Japanese Direct was a new Square Enix game, of all things. Who would have predicted a new Square Enix announcement for the Switch? That never happens. So yeah, this is a cool project. This is called Paranorma Sites, the 7 Mysteries of Hanjo, and it is a horror adventure visual novel game. Supposedly it's got a lot of just, I was reading a little bit about it, and apparently it is just going to have twist and turn after twist and turn is something that they are very keen to advertise. It's just, we don't really know too much about it other than that, but I do enjoy a good experimental visual novel from time to time.
Yep, it's a nice little horror game. It's also kind of nice. Square Enix has been putting out a lot of different games on Switch, just in terms of genres, and I don't know they've really put out many horror games, so this is kind of them carving a new path.
They like to experiment with the Switch,
point.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, last year their big experiment was, I reviewed it for the site. It was an FMV game called The Centennial Case.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. So, I mean, when they do experiment, they do tend to release things that are usually at least good. Maybe not to everyone's taste, but good little experiments here and there. And that is the Direct, folks. we spent almost twice as long talking about the Direct as the actual Direct was. Oh man. Well, do you guys have any closing thoughts on all that? What closing emotions were you guys feeling when that showcase was over? Now that we've had time to digest the whole thing.
I think I was still trying to just get back to normal from the high of Xenoblade 3. No, it was good. I think it was a good presentation. I don't think, compared to the last Direct we had, this didn't have, like, farming simulator overkill. There was a bit more variety in terms of what we got. It was a lot of stuff that we had already kind of known or were aware of. There weren't too many big surprises here. I think Samba de Amigo was probably the biggest one, that and Professor Layton. But no, this was fun. This was solid.
You mean?
It kind of makes me wonder, all the games they announced are releasing in the summer or by July at the latest, and so we don't have a holiday title yet. So I'm very curious what that's going to end up being, because I figure they're going to want some big thing to sell people during the holiday. We don't know what it is yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and with all what we talked about last week with how Nintendo might not be at E3, you know, it does leave a lot of questions up in the air as to what their plans are.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I agree with Nicolas. I think it was a very solid presentation. I think the best thing, and this is something that compared to the last one I think was way better, is that we saw a lot of solid stuff that is coming in the next months, stuff that is out after the Direct. So it just feels like it was a very real Direct with stuff that we'll be able to enjoy in the next months. So I think in general the best thing was to see the gameplay, to see, like, Pikmin 4. The last time we basically just saw a teaser, but now we actually had a trailer explaining how the game works. Even the trailer for Zelda was a little bit longer. So in general, I just liked how this was a very solid presentation. With what they showed was stuff that was actually real and it's coming out in the next months.
Yeah, no vague 2024 release windows. At least not yet. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. You know, the moment they showed off Metroid Prime Remastered, I was like, yeah, this is a good Direct. I don't really need anything else. All right, well, it's already been a pretty long episode, so I think I'm going to hold off on the other news. There was some other news that came this week, but usually the week after a Nintendo Direct, it tends to be a little bit slower. So we'll probably talk about some of the big news this week in next week's episode. But before we wrap things up, let's just kind of quickly go through what we've all been playing. I personally, I already said my piece about Metroid Prime Remastered and how much in love with that I am. In fact, I'm probably going to go play more of it as soon as we're done with this recording. But Nicolas, what about you? What have you been playing this week?
So I've been getting back into Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which is something I was wanting to be doing a couple of weeks ago, and I finally did. And it's been a lot of fun just kind of experiencing all the content I'd missed out on and getting back into the swing of things. I think I was probably a little bit burnt out on Monster Hunter when Sunbreak originally came out. But here I'm just throwing myself into it, and that's loads of fun. Otherwise, I did try a couple of the demos that popped up. I downloaded the Octopath, Kirby, and Sea of Stars one, and I haven't gone to the Octopath demo quite yet. I'm still planning to, but I have played through the Kirby and Sea of Stars ones, and those are both great. The Kirby one's relatively short, but it's just kind of nice to see a bit more of the art style of the game and what they're kind of offering. And then Sea of Stars was a game that I actually was not super excited for. I was interested in it, and I was interested in seeing more of it, but it wasn't like an insta-buy or anything. And now that I've tried it, it's become an insta-buy. It's a really good game.
Really?
It's a really... Yeah. The art style is great. It looks far better in motion than it does in the still images. It's animated very well. The music's fun. The writing is very witty and entertaining. The general battle system and the way the game seems structured is very enjoyable. I really like the different options you have in battle. It feels like a mix of Chrono Trigger and just a more traditional RPG with some Octopath / Bravely Default elements, because there's this sort of boost system where you can increase the range of your attacks, and you can also break enemies by using specific types of attacks, like an Octopath. So it's a mix of all these different RPG systems with a kind of a veneer of like old SNES era RPG. It all blends together really well.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
No, that does sound interesting. I think, like as beautiful as the game looks, when I first saw Sea of Stars, I was like, this looks cool and I'm sure it'll be solid, but I'm not really seeing anything that is making this stand out to me in other departments beyond just like the visuals. Mm-hmm. And we get so many RPGs that I'm just like, this looks cool, but I don't know when or if I'll really get around to it. But hearing you talk about it with that level of praise, that has me definitely more excited for it, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm glad that there's some more substantial meat on those bones,
What did you think about the soundtrack from what you heard?
The soundtrack is good. There's only one Yasunori Mitsuda track in the demo, and it's not actually...
Oh, I see.
It's kind of funny because it's not actually in any of the areas you can access in the demo, but what they do is on the overworld map, you can go up to the border of the area where the track plays, and there'll be like a little text box that says like, hey, you can't go into this area yet, but here's the music by Yasunori Mitsuda if you want to hear it. And you just like stay on the edge of the area and listen to it. So
they break the fourth wall.
Yeah, no, they know what people want.
We know what the people want. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
But otherwise, just in general, the soundtrack is solid.
Right.
I have to listen to it individually without the gameplay just to be able to analyze it a bit more, but it was good. I liked it. And again, it's got Mitsuda as a guest composer, so I really want to hear more of his tracks in the main game as well.
Nice.
And the Kirby demo, what exactly does that encompass in terms of content?
Right. It's honestly really small. There isn't like a save transfer or anything. What it is you have access to the new minigame mode, the Merry Magoland, and there's 2 minigames you can play through that. One returning one, which is the Ninja Star throwing one, and one new game, which is the like basically tank shooter, where you have a gun and you have to lob shots or shoot directly at people and take down their health. So those 2 are available for up to 4 players, and you can also unlock, I think, like 4 masks to put on your characters, which are like basically the unlockables you get from that new minigame mode. And then in actual levels, there are 3 levels, a boss, and then an EX boss, which is basically just that same boss but with a harder moveset.
Gotcha. Okay, so enough to get a taste, but nothing
It's not
crazy.
substantial.
Yeah.
You would probably be done with it. You'd easily be done with it in an hour. But, like you said, it's a little taste. Just if you're curious what the art style is or how it feels on a Switch, this is the way to try it out.
Yeah. Well, that game is right around the corner, too, so folks don't have to wait long to have all their questions answered for sure. We're hoping to review it over on the site as well. So if you want to learn more about that game, stay tuned for that. Luiz, what about you, man? What have you been playing?
Actually, I can't talk about the game that I'm playing right now because it's in embargo. I have a friend who has a website in Brazil, and I asked this game in particular because I really wanted to play it. I will just say in very broad terms that it's an interesting experience because I don't know if you guys ever played a game like that, but the game is not very polished. The game has a lot of questionable decisions in the level design, but even so, I'm having a lot of fun. So
you're playing a Pokemon game.
It's a tricky game to review, to find a final verdict for a game like that. But it's also a very interesting game to write about. So maybe I think in the next episode or in the next after that, I'll be able to review which game it is. But beyond that, I think I played a little bit of Fire Emblem Engage because I bought the game. But sadly, I'm not very far on it. I think I'm on chapter 5, which is very early. The only thing that I can say is that I love the soundtrack. I love the graphics. It's a step. It's way better than Three Houses. That's what I want to say. It looks very, very nice on the Switch. It's super colorful, so it's art style that really catches me. But so far, all the battles that I faced were pretty easy because I'm still at the start of the game, so I'm still getting used to it. I don't have a lot to talk about the experience in general, but I look forward to enjoying this game a lot.
Yeah, it's always hard this time of year. Like, I feel like everyone's attention is divided. Like,
Yeah.
It's so hard to be able to just like sit down and focus on one game. Like,
True.
Like, I've been really just wanting to dig into the Metroid Prime Remaster, and I have been. But I have so many other games too that I picked up recently and that I'm trying to get through before something else comes out, and so it's like yeah. So I totally feel your pain, Luiz. If I've only been able to put in X amount of hours, it's a challenge. All right, well, folks, that is our episode for the week. Thank you so much for tuning in and celebrating the Nintendo Direct with us. If you like what you hear, please spread the word. Tell your friends. We are on all the streaming platforms, everything from Spotify to YouTube to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and we're really trying to get new folks to listen to our show. So please spread the word and tell your friends. And beyond that, we will be back at you next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.